An air ambulance pilot receives the most critical mission of his career, transporting a human heart, viable for only 4 more hours, to a hospital 240 kilometers away. But between him and the patient waiting on the operating table stands the most violent storm of the season. With every minute counting, he must choose between following safety protocols or risking everything to save a life hanging by a thread. There are flights you never forget, the ones that make you question every decision, every second, every beat of your own heart. This is the story of one of those flights. A story where time was the real enemy, where 240 kilometers seemed like an eternity, and where I held in my hands something more precious than any cargo I'd ever transported. Someone's last chance at life. Have you ever imagined carrying a person's future inside a thermal box? My name is Jake, and I've been flying rescue and medical transport aircraft for 12 years. I've seen everything. Births on board, patients in critical condition, organs being transported against the clock. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for that March night. It was exactly 9:47 p.m. when my phone rang. The transplant center coordinator was on the other end of the line, and from the urgency in her voice, I already knew it would be a race against time. Jake, we've got a heart. Patient is a 17-year-old girl, severe dilated cardiomyopathy. She's been on the table for 3 hours waiting. The organ is in Phoenix and needs to get to the hospital in Los Angeles within 4 hours max. Otherwise, it won't be viable anymore. Are you available? My response was immediate. I'll be on the tarmac in 15 minutes. I hung up and looked out the window. The sky was loaded, dark clouds accumulating on the horizon. The weather forecast I'd checked earlier talked about instability, but nothing that seemed prohibitive. I put on my uniform, grabbed my flight bag, and headed to the hangar. The aircraft was already being prepped by the ground crew. A King Air C-90, reliable turboprop, perfect for this type of mission. Capacity for 8 passengers, but that night there would be only 3 of us. Me, my co-pilot Marcus, and the perfusionist doctor who would care for the organ during transport. While doing the external pre-flight, checking every detail of the aircraft, I felt that pit in my stomach that always comes before a critical mission. It's not fear, it's respect. Respect for the responsibility you're carrying. Marcus arrived shortly after, already with the flight documents prepared. I saw the updated forecast, he said. With that serious expression I knew well. There's a severe instability line forming right in our route. SIGMET issued 20 minutes ago, storm with cloud tops at 45,000 feet, lightning, severe turbulence, hail. I took a deep breath. Our aircraft had an operational ceiling of 30,000 feet. There was no way to fly over it. We'd have to go around or go through. How much time would we lose detouring? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Marcus checked the tablet. 45 minutes minimum. Maybe an hour, depending on the extent of the storm. I did the math mentally. The direct flight would take about 50 minutes. With the detour, we'd arrive at the limit or beyond the organ's viability window. And going through, I insisted. Marcus looked me in the eyes. We'd been partners for 6 years. He knew what I was thinking. Jake, it's risky, very risky. The turbulence could be extreme. They've got hail reported. Visibility will be 0 in there. I know, I replied, feeling the weight of the decision. But I also know there's a 17-year-old girl on the operating table, chest open, waiting for this heart. If we miss this window, she dies. At that moment, the medical team van arrived. The perfusionist doctor got out with the white thermal box, marked with red stickers. Human organ, urgent, transplant. She quickly boarded the aircraft and secured the box in the special compartment, fastening it with the seat belts. 4 hours since harvest, she informed. 50 minutes have passed. We've got 3 hours and 10 minutes max. 3 hours and 10 minutes. I climbed into the cockpit, adjusted my seat, put on my headset, and began the startup checklist. Marcus did the same beside me. I keyed the radio. Tower, aircraft November 72 Mike Kilo at the taxiway, requesting takeoff clearance with medical priority. Organ transport for transplant. November 72 Mike Kilo Tower. Cleared to taxi to runway 27. Wind 240 at 8 knots. Altimeter 299.5. Cleared for immediate takeoff after positioning. Good luck. Roger, Tower. Taxiing to 27. I positioned the aircraft at the threshold, did the final checks. The Pratt & Whitney engines purred strongly. all instruments in the green, but ahead through the windscreen I could see the dark wall waiting for us on the horizon. Lightning cut through the sky every few seconds, illuminating the clouds from within like macabre lanterns. "Marcus," I said, "I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what we're going to find in there. If you don't feel comfortable, I respect that. We can abort and detour." He was silent for 3 seconds that felt like an eternity. Then he responded, "That girl deserves her chance, Jake. I'm with you. But let's be smart. At the first sign the aircraft can't handle it, we abort and detour. Deal?" "Deal." I advanced the throttles. The aircraft accelerated down the runway, the sidelights passing faster and faster. 60 knots, 80, 100. I gently pulled back on the yoke. 120 knots. The wheels left the ground. We were airborne. If you don't know the Black Box channel yet, subscribe now and hit the bell to follow real stories from the skies that'll leave you breathless. The initial climb was smooth. I configured the aircraft for climb, retracted the landing gear, adjusted engine power. We passed 3,000 feet, then 5,000. The tower handed us off to approach control, which cleared us direct to the navigation point over Flagstaff. November 7-2 Mike Kilo. Be advised there are reports of severe turbulence and intense electrical activity on your route. 2 commercial aircraft have diverted in the last 20 minutes. Confirm you wish to maintain route. Control November 7-2. Mike Kilo confirms. We have medical priority. Organ transport with critical time window. Understood, Mike Kilo. Good luck. Frequency approved. Maintain guard on emergency. At 10,000 feet we were still in relatively calm air, but we could already see what awaited us. The storm front was a solid wall of cumulonimbus clouds, giant towers rising as far as the eye could see. Lightning danced inside them like luminous veins of a living organism. The aircraft's weather radar showed red and purple cells, the most intense. There was no clean corridor. We'd have to go through the heart of the beast. 20,000 feet, I announced, configuring for cruise altitude. Check, Marcus responded. Updating route. Distance to Los Angeles, 220 kilometers. Estimated time, 42 minutes in normal conditions. 42 minutes. 2 hours and 28 minutes of organ viability remained. We still had margin, but only if everything went well. "Jake," the doctor's voice came over the intercom, "what's the forecast looking like? I need to know if I should be worried about the box's stability." "It's going to get turbulent," I replied honestly. "Very turbulent. Make sure you're strapped in tight and that box is absolutely secure. Don't let go for anything." "Understood." I took a deep breath and adjusted course. There was no turning back now. Ahead, darkness awaited. 15,000 feet separated us from entering the storm. I could see the exact boundary where calm air ended and hell began. The cloud base was like a dark grey curtain, undulating and pulsing. I checked all instruments one more time. Autopilot off, I'd need full manual control. Belts tightened to the max. Nav lights at maximum intensity. Pitot heat activated to prevent ice formation. Storm radar on most sensitive mode. "Marcus, I'm going to need you to constantly monitor our altitude, airspeed, and attitude. If we start losing control, let me know immediately. I'm going to be focused on keeping the wings level." "You got it. And remember, if turbulence exceeds structural limits, we abort immediately. No organ is worth our lives or the doctor's." "Agreed." I looked at the clock. 10:31 p.m. 3 hours and 17 minutes since harvest. 2 hours and 43 minutes remained. I advanced the throttles a bit more, increasing speed. Every second counted now. At 15,500 feet we entered the first layer of clouds. Visibility dropped to 0 instantly. The world outside disappeared, replaced by a grey mist that enveloped the aircraft. I began to feel the first jolts. Light at first, like we were going over ripples on a dirt road, then stronger. The aircraft began to shake. "Entering turbulence zone," I announced. "Hold on tight." What happened in the next few minutes was unlike anything I'd experienced in 12 years of aviation. The turbulence went from moderate to severe in seconds. The aircraft started being violently shaken, climbing and dropping hundreds of feet in moments. The altimeter spun like crazy. 16,000 feet, 15,600, 16,200, 15,900. I fought with the yoke, trying to maintain some control, but it was like trying to hold onto a runaway mechanical bull. Severe turbulence, Marcus shouted, his voice tense. Altitude variation plus or minus 400 feet. Airspeed oscillating between 150 and 220 knots. A lightning bolt exploded to our right, so close it lit up the entire cockpit for a split second. The thunder came instantly, a boom so loud I felt it in my bones. Another lightning bolt to the left, then another above. We were flying through an artillery barrage of light and sound. We've got electrical discharge on the windscreens. Marcus pointed to the St. Elmo's fire filaments dancing across the glass surface, like tiny blue lightning bolts. The rain began. No, rain is too weak a word. It was like someone was dumping buckets of water against the aircraft. The noise was deafening, a constant roar competing with the engine drone. And then came the hail. I heard the first impact, a loud crack against the fuselage, then another, then a barrage. It was like being inside a drum while someone threw rocks at it. Crack, 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 crack. We're taking hail, I shouted. Doctor, how is it back there? Holding on, she shouted back. Box is intact, keep going. The aircraft gave a violent lurch downward. My stomach shot up to my throat. The altimeter showed a 600-foot drop in 2 seconds. I pulled hard on the yoke, added power. The aircraft responded, but slowly, heavily. Another downdraft. This time we lost 800 feet before I could stabilize. The wings flexed under the forces. I could see them through the side window when lightning illuminated the exterior. My training said, in severe turbulence, maintain attitude. Don't try to constantly correct altitude. Let the aircraft climb and descend. Just keep the wings level. But my instinct screamed, do something. I forced myself to follow training, focused on the artificial horizon. Kept wings level. Let altitude vary. Maintained airspeed in the green range. 14,000 feet, Marcus announced. We're descending. I know. Let it descend. We'll go underneath if we have to. Another lightning strike, this one so close I smelled ozone. The hair on my arm stood up. The static electricity was so intense that even the controls seemed to tingle under my fingers. Jake, Marcus's voice was strained. Look at the radar. The cell ahead is way more intense, dark purple. We need to deviate. I looked at the radar screen. He was right. Ahead, 40 kilometers away, there was an even more powerful cell. If what we were going through was already almost unbearable, that one would be impossible. How much time to detour? I shouted above the noise. 30 minutes, maybe more. 30 minutes we didn't have. I looked at the clock. 10:47 p.m. 2 hours and 33 minutes of viability remained. If we detoured now, we'd arrive at the absolute limit. Maybe too late. Jake, Marcus insisted. We can't. That cell will destroy us. There are lives at stake, I shouted back. The girl on the table, her family waiting. We can't give up. And there are 3 lives here in this aircraft, he shot back. Including the doctor, think about that. He was right. I knew he was right. But my mind kept going back to that image. A 17-year-old girl, on the operating table, chest open, her diseased heart already removed, waiting for a new heart that might not arrive in time. How long could she hold on? What would the doctors tell her parents when the organ arrived too late? Sorry, we did our best. The aircraft was shaken again, a movement so violent my head hit the side window despite the belt. I saw stars for a second. Blood. My forehead was bleeding. Jake, Marcus grabbed my arm. Are you okay? I'm fine, I lied. My head was throbbing, but I couldn't stop now. I'm going to try to pass under the most intense cell, descending to 10,000 feet. Jake, that's crazy. I know, but it's the only shot. I pushed the yoke forward, reducing power. The aircraft entered descent. 9,000 feet, 8,500, 8,000. The turbulence didn't improve. If anything, it got worse. We were closer to the cloud base where currents are most chaotic. The aircraft was thrown side to side like a toy. I constantly fought the controls, my arms beginning to ache from the effort. 7,500 feet. 7,000. Terrain warning! The GPWS alarm sounded in the cockpit. Terrain warning! GPWS off, Marcus announced. We know we're low. More lightning. More turbulence. More hail hammering the fuselage. I checked the chronometer. We'd been inside the storm for 14 minutes. It felt like an eternity. Distance to Los Angeles? I shouted. 160 kilometers. Still 30 minutes at this speed. 30 minutes, the longest half hour of my life was just beginning. 6,500 feet. Finally, I began to feel a slight improvement. Turbulence was still severe, but a notch down from what it was. The hail diminished. It still rained hard, but it wasn't that hellish barrage anymore. "I think we're coming out of the worst part," I shouted with a glimmer of hope. That's when I heard the sound. A sound every pilot fears. A sound that makes your blood run cold. One of the engines started coughing. "Right engine losing power," Marcus shouted, eyes wide fixed on the instruments. "Oil pressure dropping, temperature rising." I looked at the gauge. He was right. The right Pratt & Whitney engine was failing, probably damage from hail ingestion, or ice accumulated somewhere critical despite the anti-ice system, or lightning that hit some component. The cause didn't matter. What mattered was we were losing half our power. "Preparing for right engine shutdown," I announced, my voice calmer than I felt. I started the emergency checklist from memory. Reduce power on affected engine. Watch parameters. If necessary, shut down completely. Right engine failure. Activating engine fire extinguisher. Marcus pulled the right engine fire extinguisher handle. The indicator showed the system was activated. "Shutting down right engine!" I completed the action, pulling the fuel cutoff lever. The engine died. The sound changed dramatically. The balanced hum of two engines transformed into the asymmetric sound of one engine only. The aircraft began to yaw right. I applied strong pressure on the left rudder pedal to compensate. Adjusted the trim. The aircraft stabilized. But now we were flying on one engine only at night inside a storm at 6,000 feet, carrying a human organ that needed to reach its destination in less than 2 hours. "Control," I called on the radio, my voice tense. "November 7-2 Mike Kilo declaring emergency. We have right engine failure. Requesting vectors direct to nearest airport and absolute priority." "November 7-2 Mike Kilo control. Emergency received. Nearest airport is Bakersfield, 60 kilometers south of your position. Cleared direct. All traffic being diverted. Runway 27 is at your disposal. Emergency crews being activated. 60 kilometers to Bakersfield. A safe airport with long runways, trained crews. We could land safely, assess damage, maybe transfer the organ to another aircraft. Maybe. With luck. If there was another aircraft available, if we could make the transfer fast enough. If. I looked at the clock again. 10:58 p.m. 2 hours and 2 minutes of viability remained. 60 kilometers to Bakersfield. Then another 120 to Los Angeles. There wouldn't be time. Even if we managed to transfer the organ in 15 minutes, a miracle, we wouldn't arrive in time. But there was another option. An insane option. Continue. Straight to Los Angeles, on one engine, through the rest of the storm. "Marcus," I said, my voice low, "how long to Los Angeles?" He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Jake, no, don't even think about it." "How long?" 140 kilometers, on one engine, at this speed, maybe 40 minutes. 45 minutes. We'd arrive with an hour and 20 margin. It was tight, but possible. If we could get through the rest of the storm. If the remaining engine held. If there were no more emergencies. "November 7-2 Mike Kilo," the controller's voice returned. "Confirm your intention. Do you wish to proceed to Bakersfield?" I held the radio button. My hand trembled. "Control, November 7-2 Mike Kilo negative. Requesting clearance to proceed direct to Los Angeles. Nature of cargo is heart transplant with critical time window. Patient is on the table waiting. If we divert, she dies." Silence on the other end. 5 seconds that felt like 5 minutes. "November 7-2. Mike Kilo. Control understands the situation, but are you aware of the risks? Flying single engine through adverse weather conditions?" "I'm aware, Control, but I'm also aware that a 17-year-old girl is going to die if I don't try. The decision is mine." More silence. Then, "Understood, Mike Kilo. You're the pilot in command. Cleared direct to Los Angeles. Vectoring to intercept ILS runway 17. Current altitude 6,000 feet. Maintain. Good luck, Commander. Everyone here is pulling for you." "Thank you, Control." I released the mic and looked at Marcus. "Last chance to change your mind," he said. "We can still divert to Bakersfield." I shook my head. "No, we're going all the way." He nodded slowly. "Then let's do this right. I'll manage the remaining engine with maximum care. You focus on keeping the flight stable. Deal." Don't miss any episode. Subscribe to the Black Box channel and discover more impressive stories of courage in the skies. The next 45 minutes were the longest of my life. Flying single-engine isn't impossible. All multi-engine aircraft are certified for it. But doing it at night, in adverse weather conditions with turbulence after going through hail that could have caused unseen structural damage, that was pushing the limits beyond reasonable. But I couldn't think about that. Had to focus. One step at a time. 1 minute at a time. Checking all systems, Marcus announced, following a new checklist. Fuel sufficient for hour and a half. Hydraulic system operational. Electrical operational. Comms okay. Flight instruments okay. Check. How's the remaining engine? Temperature and pressure normal. But I'm monitoring every 10 seconds. Any anomaly, I'll let you know. Perfect. The storm began to gradually diminish. Turbulence reduced from severe to moderate, then to light. The rain decreased. Lightning became more spaced out. Little by little, very slowly, we started coming out of the worst. At 11:20 p.m., we finally broke through the cloud layer. Ahead, I could see some lights on the ground. Civilization, safety, almost there. 110 kilometers to Los Angeles, Marcus announced. 32 minutes. How much viability time left? He checked the chronometer. 1 hour and 40 minutes. We're going to make it, I said, more to myself than to him. We're going to make it. But the universe seemed determined to test our resolve to the last second. Jake, the doctor's voice came over the intercom, and there was something different in the tone, something urgent. Yes, doctor? The box. The internal temperature is rising. The ice is melting faster than predicted. Must be because of the turbulence, the pressurization. I don't know. But the warming rate increased. My heart raced. How much time do we have? If it continues at this rate, an hour, maybe less. An hour. Less than I thought. Much less. Marcus, I need more speed. How much can we squeeze out of this engine? He checked the instruments. I can increase to maximum continuous power. We'll gain about 15 knots, but it'll consume more fuel and put more stress on the engine. Do it. Every minute counts now. He advanced the throttle. The engine roared louder. Speed increased. 180 knots, 190, 200. 80 kilometers, Marcus counted. 23 minutes. We passed over Lancaster. The city lights twinkled below like terrestrial stars. Then over Palmdale. Greater Los Angeles spread ahead, an ocean of lights. I'd never seen anything so beautiful. Los Angeles Control, November 7-2, Mike Kilo with you. Medical emergency, single engine, requesting direct ILS approach, runway 17. November the 7-2, Mike Kilo, Los Angeles Control. Welcome. All traffic has been diverted. You're alone in the airspace. Clear descent to 3,000 feet. Vectoring to intercept ILS. Ground crew is prepared for rapid organ transfer. Ambulance waiting on the ramp. Thanks, Control. Beginning descent. I reduced power gently. The aircraft began to descend. 5,000 feet. 4,000, 3,000. Ahead I could see the approach lights for runway 17, a red and white line guiding us home. 40 kilometers, Marcus announced. 12 minutes. Fuel sufficient. Engine operating normally. Landing gear coming down, I announced, activating the lever. I felt the familiar thump of the gear extending and locking. 3 green lights. Gear down and locked. Flaps 20 degrees. Intercepting ILS, Marcus confirmed. Glide slope captured. The aircraft aligned with the runway like it was on invisible rails. Even on one engine, it responded sweetly. Good girl. Just a few more minutes. 10 kilometers. You're on perfect glide. Full flaps. Landing checklist. We passed over the airport boundary. I could see the runway ahead, perfectly illuminated. The ambulance was already positioned on the side, lights flashing. A convoy of fire trucks, too. 3,000 feet. 2,000. 1,000. 500. 100. 50. The radio altimeter numbers decreasing. 40. 30. 20. 10. Flare, I announced, gently pulling back on the yoke. The aircraft leveled a few feet off the ground. I reduced power to 0. The wheels touched. Once, twice, we were on the ground. Reverse! I applied reverse on the remaining engine. The aircraft decelerated rapidly. I engaged the brakes carefully. 50 knots, 40, 30, 20, 10. Stopped. November 7-2, Mike Kilo Tower. Welcome to terra firma. Flight time 52 minutes. Follow the guide car to parking position. I didn't wait for the guide car. I taxied directly to where the ambulance was. Shut down the engine as soon as I stopped. Silence. Blessed silence after almost an hour of engine roar and storm. I took off my headset, unfastened my belt. My hands were shaking. My shirt was drenched in sweat. My forehead still bleeding. But we were alive, and in the right place. The rear door opened. The doctor descended quickly with the thermal box. The ambulance crew was already waiting. In 15 seconds, the box was transferred. The ambulance took off, sirens wailing, cutting through the night. I looked at the clock. 11:39 p.m. 3 hours and 52 minutes since harvest. 8 minutes of margin. 8 minutes between life and death for a girl. Marcus put his hand on my shoulder. "We made it," he said, his voice hoarse. "We made it, brother." I turned to him. There were tears in my eyes, in his too. We climbed down from the aircraft. My knees almost buckled when I touched the ground. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, leaving in its place a profound exhaustion. The ramp supervisor came running. "Commander, are you injured?" I touched my forehead. There was dried blood there, mixed with sweat. "It's just a scratch," I replied. "How's the aircraft?" "We'll do a complete inspection, but at first glance, you guys went through a lot. There's hail damage on the fuselage and wings. The radome is partially destroyed." But she held. "This is a strong aircraft." I gave an affectionate pat to the metal fuselage. "She is the best partner a pilot could have." In the next few minutes, a crew of mechanics arrived to assess the damage. The right engine had indeed suffered severe hail damage. Some of the compressor blades were deformed. Fortunately, it had failed before destroying itself completely. The fuselage had hundreds of small hail marks, but nothing structural. The windscreens were scratched but intact. The weather radar had cracks but still worked. By a narrow margin, very narrow, we had survived. I went to the airport operations room. I needed to file the emergency report, talk to the FAA inspectors, explain every decision I'd made. I knew there would be questions, scrutiny, maybe even an investigation. I'd put the aircraft and crew at risk. I'd flown through conditions most pilots would have avoided. I'd continued single engine when I could have landed safely, but I also knew I'd done the only thing I could have done, the right thing. At 2 in the morning, my phone rang. It was the transplant center coordinator. "Jake?" "Yes." There was a pause. Then she said, her voice choked, "The transplant was a success. Surgery finished 15 minutes ago. The heart is beating strong. The girl's going to live." I closed my eyes. Tears flowed freely now. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you for letting me know." "No, thank you. And Marcus and Dr. Marina. You three saved her life. Her parents asked me to pass along their gratitude. They have no words. We just did our job." "No, you did much more than that. You risked your own lives. That's heroism." I hung up and sat there in the empty room, letting it all finally hit me. The fear I'd suppressed during the flight, the tension, the exhaustion, the relief. I thought about the girl. I didn't even know her name. For privacy reasons, that information isn't shared. Didn't know what she looked like, if she was blonde or brunette, tall or short, shy or outgoing. But I knew that somewhere in that city, at that exact moment, she was lying in an ICU bed, with a new heart beating in her chest. A heart that almost didn't arrive in time. A heart that traveled 240 kilometers through the most violent storm of the season. A heart that would now give her a second chance at life. I thought about all the moments during that flight when we could have died. Hail punching through the fuselage, lightning striking the aircraft directly, turbulence exceeding structural limits, the second engine failing. So many things that could have gone wrong, but they didn't. By luck, by skill, by fate, I don't know, maybe a combination of all three. What I do know is that night, 3 people climbed into a small aircraft and flew straight into the heart of a deadly storm, because they believed a life was worth the risk. And that night, a 17-year-old girl gained a future she wouldn't have had otherwise. Weeks later, I learned more details. I found out her name was Emily, though they shouldn't have told me. That she loved music and played guitar. That she dreamed of being a veterinarian. That she'd spent the last 2 years going in and out of the hospital, her heart slowly failing, waiting for a miracle. And that night, the miracle came. On the wings of a damaged aircraft, piloted by two exhausted and scared men but determined. The aircraft was in maintenance for 2 weeks. They replaced the right engine, repaired all hail damage, installed new windscreens and a new radome. When I finally flew her again, she seemed brand new. But to me, she'd never be just an aircraft again. She was the aircraft that crossed the impossible. Months later, I received an envelope in the mail. Inside there was a letter. It was from Emily. She wrote about how she woke up from surgery and learned she had a new heart, how she felt it beat for the first time. Strange, but strong. How she cried with joy and relief. How she thanked the doctors, the nurses, the donor's family, and how she learned later about the flight, about the storm, about the decision to continue. "I know you don't know me," she wrote, "and I don't know you. But I wanted you to know that every beat of this heart is a tribute to the courage you and your team showed that night. You gave me not just life, but years. Decades, I hope. Experiences I would have missed. Dreams I can now pursue. There aren't enough words to say thank you, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to honor this gift by living fully, with purpose, with joy. And always remembering that there were people who risked everything so I could have this chance." I kept that letter. I reread it sometimes, especially on difficult days, when I question my choices, when I feel tired, when routine feels heavy. And I remember why I do what I do. It's not for the paycheck, it's not for the adrenaline. It's not even for the passion for flying, though that exists. It's for moments like that, moments when you have the chance, even if small, even if risky, to make an absolute difference in someone's life, to be the link between death and life, to carry hope through the clouds. Today, 5 years after that flight, I still fly medical aircraft. I've transported dozens of organs since then. Hearts, livers, kidneys, lungs. Each one a life being saved, each mission critical, but none was like that night. I ran into Marcus the other day. He's still my preferred co-pilot, though now we fly bigger, more modern aircraft. We had coffee together, and inevitably the conversation came back to that flight. "Would you do it again?" he asked. I thought for a long moment. "Yes," I finally replied, but with more fear this time. That night adrenaline drove us. We didn't have time to really be afraid. If it were today, knowing everything that could have gone wrong, it would be harder. But yes, I'd do it, because that decision wasn't about us. It was about Emily, and about all the Emilys in the world who deserve their chance. He nodded. "Sometimes," Marcus said, "the right decision isn't the safest decision. But that doesn't make it any less right. A few months ago, I was invited to give a talk at a flight school. I spoke about safety, about procedures, about the importance of following regulations. But I also spoke about that night, about the impossible decision, about the storm, about the engine failing, about arriving with 8 minutes to spare. One of the students raised his hand. "Commander, don't you think it was irresponsible? That you put lives at unnecessary risk?" It was a fair question, a question I'd asked myself hundreds of times. Was it risky? Absolutely, I replied. Was it dangerous? Without a doubt. Did I break some rules? Probably, but you know what would be truly irresponsible? Having the ability to save a life and choosing not to try, giving up without fighting, letting fear paralyze you when someone's counting on you. I paused. But understand, this shouldn't be the norm. Aviation is about safety first, always. That night was an exception, a unique situation where all factors converged, and even then, every second I was ready to abort if we exceeded safety limits. The line between courage and recklessness is very thin. You need experience and judgment to know where that line is. And how do you know? The student asked. I thought carefully before responding. You never know for sure, but you assess. You consider all variables, the aircraft's condition, your skills, your experience, the risk versus the benefit, and then you make a decision and live with the consequences. That night, I assessed everything and decided I had a reasonable chance of success. Could it have gone wrong? Yes. Would I have blamed myself for the rest of my life? But I also knew that if I didn't try, someone would certainly die. At least by trying, there was hope. To this day, when I see storms forming on the horizon, I remember that night. I remember the hail hammering the fuselage, the lightning ripping through the sky, the aircraft being shaken like a toy, the engine failing, the decision to continue, and I remember Emily, her new heart beating, her letter, her life being lived. Was it worth it? Every second of terror that night worth it for that? Yes. 1,000 times yes, because at the end of the day, our life isn't measured by our fears, but by what we do despite them. It's not measured by the storms we avoid, but by the ones we fly through. And it's not measured by what we keep safe, but by what we risk when it matters. 240 kilometers. A perfect storm. A heart beating against the clock. 3 people in a small aircraft, and a decision that changed everything. Have you ever wondered what you'd do if you had to choose between your safety and a stranger's life? If you'd have the courage to fly straight into a storm, knowing every second counts? I had to make that choice, and I carry the scars and the gratitude of that decision to this day, because some flights don't end when you land. They continue forever, beating in your chest like a second heart. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who loves aviation, and subscribe to Black Box, because every story we tell here is a testament to courage, decision-making, and humanity in the skies. And believe me, we've got many more to share with you.